Hey there, spooky friends. Welcome to another episode of the Scaryish podcast.
Woo!
I'm Robin Grace. This is Adam Diaz, and I can't believe we're on episode 143.
I can't believe we're recording episode 143 at 2:31 a.m., 90 minutes before it comes out at 4 a.m. Pacific time.
I just can't believe we're at 143 episodes. We've done
a lot
of topics.
286 topics, plus the pilot episode. So
that's so crazy.
It's a lot. Although we did have special guests, Mondo, we had Ralph twice, we had Brett. We're not doing that much. It's like 138 topics times two. It's been a lot of fucking topics. I will also say the reason that we're recording so late is because scripting took a little bit longer than normal because of this fucking TV show Alone.
We started watching Alone, which is like this survivalist TV show.
It's like it's not survival, or it's not Survivor. It's Man vs. Wild or Bear Grylls, like that sort of shit.
Yeah,
but it has like 10 people at once in different parts of this area, and it's like, all right, whoever makes it the longest will get you before you die.
It's really cool to watch because some of these people have such crazy skills at surviving, and it's absolutely enthralling, you know?
It is. It's like 10 contestants, I don't know how many episodes, and we're just watching them drop like flies, like, yeah, I couldn't do that.
Oh, man, this season that we're watching right now, somebody dropped out because they got too emotional, and they missed their family, and I was like, weak, JK,
it's like, you miss your family for $500,000? Like, that's so much fucking money.
I couldn't survive. I could probably go 2 days and then be like, nah, bruh, I need to leave.
Yeah, I'd be like, dude, I can't do this. Like, come get me. But anyways.
Anyway, that's our TV show tangent that we're addicted to. Okay. What are you covering this week?
This week, I'm going to be covering gender reveal parties.
I think that's the most hilarious topic that you've ever covered.
What are you going to be covering this week, Robin?
I'm going to be doing the Cleveland torso murder.
Which is someone who they overlapped with the Black Dahlia from last week, right?
Yeah.
Cool. I really like the follow-up. I almost wanted to do a follow-up on some of the alien cases that I found when I was doing Project Blue Book, but I was like, no, you're saving it for Spooktober. That's what's going to happen.
Wait, what's your Spooktober theme?
Aliens. I just said that.
Oh, got it. Okay.
I said that last week, too. So, yeah, I think I'm going to be going first, in fact, so we'll have a little bit of lightheartedness before we get to the serial killer stuff, which I think will be fun. So,
should we do serial killer and then end with the happy stuff? Okay.
I want to go first because I have a shorter script. Anyways, so this week, something rather bizarre happened that seems to be happening all over the country and, indeed, the world. At the time I'm writing this, there is a plague upon us. And no, I'm not talking about COVID-19. And no, I'm not talking about stupidity, which is just a general plague at all times. I'm actually talking about the trend that was created by a woman named Jenna Myers. I'm going to try and get this last name right. Carvunidis. Probably didn't get it right, but didn't pronounce it right. I spelled it right, though, which is better than a bunch of the places that I was reading articles from. And I am talking about the plague known as gender reveal parties. And yes, you did hear me right. These last two times, my topic this week is the gender reveal party. And while that might not be paranormal or true crime, I think it definitely qualifies as scary-ish considering all the things that are happening with them, and more importantly, when they go wrong. So if you've never heard of a gender reveal party, if you're somehow one of those people who's never heard of it, I may be infecting you with this knowledge because it almost seems like poison at this point. But when a man and a woman fall in love,
oh God, shut up!
Or get intoxicated, they can produce
Stop
what
it.
is known as a baby. Now, I'm not 100% sure how this works, and if you're a child, just go ahead and skip ahead 30 seconds or a minute and just ask your parents. But I'm fairly certain it has to do with a stork and a wiener barfing all over a woman's ovaries.
Just stop it! Just no, you can't put that in there.
I'm not a scientist, just an enthusiast.
You can't put that in there.
But once the lady is pregnant, it can be determined eventually what the sex of the child is through an ultrasound. Now, Healthline.com has informed me that ultrasounds are able to tell as early as 12 to 14 weeks, depending on the angle that they can see the child, although most doctors schedule the official test, quote-unquote, around 18 to 21 weeks. I've heard of it all ranges between like 11 and 21 weeks before. I'm not experienced in this matter myself, so forgive me on that. But recently it's become a sort of, like the last 12 years or so, a sort of ceremony for the parents of the child to be told, instead through like the doctor to their face, from a family member or a friend who finds out once the test is done, and then they design a party around the reveal of what the biological gender will be. It sounds like something that was started with good intentions, and it was, and we'll get to that, and something that you can see and celebrate. And I personally always thought it was kind of weird because of all the parents that I've known, most of them are rooting one way or the other, like I want a boy or I want a girl. And it's just sort of this public thing where you might experience disappointment, you know? And would you want to share that with your kid? Like, here's where we did the gender reveal and I found out you weren't what I wanted, you know?
Yeah.
It's like before you came out, you were already disappointing me, which I feel like is something that a bad parent might hang over their kid's head. But that said, like, it's become this weird trend that these reveals need to be more and more elaborate.
It's so ridiculous.
It's getting out of control. Okay? It really, and it's affecting people that aren't the parents, that aren't the child, that aren't just the friends or family. So it doesn't come as a shock to know that the more elaborate these gender reveals are getting, the possibility for something to go wrong, and in some cases terribly wrong, keeps going up and up. And this topic is going to be me discussing gender reveals that have gone terribly wrong. So let's just start really quickly with the big one that's on everyone's mind right now, okay? So a couple in San Bernardino County had a party to reveal the biological gender of their unborn child. So what method did they choose, you ask? Well, some popular ideas, according to thebump.com, include things like a piñata, right? A piñata with confetti that's either blue or pink, a sorting hat from Harry Potter with a little nameplate underneath that says boy or girl, and when you lift it up, actually it doesn't say boy or girl, it says wizard or witch. So you pull it up, it's like, it's a witch, and it's like, it's not even born yet. That's a mean thing to say.
I mean, I just feel like discerning the sex of your... I just feel like you can't be like, oh, it's a boy, so we're going to raise it as a boy because, you know...
I'll get into that, too, in a little bit. So, gender reveal scratch-off cards also exist, where it's just like a lotto scratch and win. It's like,
that's kind of cool.
It's like, I got 3 penises, it's going to be a boy. Neato.
You're so
there's so many things out there for doing these. I was shocked to see it, but rather than tell you what the site says for the ones that aren't so smart, I'm going to let you know which one this couple chose and then tell you some of the other things, all of which are on thebump.com. So let's go ahead and dive into this particular one. The couple decided to go with a, quote, smoke-generating pyrotechnic device. I would personally call this thing a smoke bomb. Others call it a smoke-generating pyrotechnic device. Others being the local fire department. So you know where this is going.
It sounds like a bomb.
Well, it's a smoke bomb. So it wound up setting a fire in the brush, which quickly spread. And I'm not sure whether to emphasize the word quickly or the word spread in that sentence, because as of the time I'm doing this episode, the fire has already claimed 8,600 acres of wilderness, and for comparison, Disneyland is 510 acres.
What?
So it's already burned through 17 times the size of Disneyland, just so that they could find out the gender of their child via smoke bomb. That fire is still burning, and is currently 7% contained.
Our entire sky is so hazy right now.
It's insane.
It's
like,
insane.
What I find annoying and hilarious about this whole thing is that I cannot find a reliable source about what the actual gender was from that smoke bomb. I saw a few websites claiming it was a boy, but then I noticed that the article they're quoting is a 2018 article, not the 2020 article, because the same fucking thing happened in 2018, and I'm gonna get to that in a little bit. I will say, though, when I woke up this morning and I looked outside, the sky was yellow-orange here in Las Vegas, as the smoke is so bad, you can't see the sky here right now. You can see the sun, which is a red ball in the sky, and I think it's safe to say, if you use a smoke bomb to reveal the gender of your baby, and the world starts on fire, the skies turn yellow-orange, and the sun turns red, your baby is the gender known as Antichrist. Because that is a very bad sign.
That's such a fucked up thing to say.
Hey, all I know is that their stupid party has completely affected the entire West Coast right now, and it's fucking nuts. But like I said, I can only find info from this 2018 gender reveal. This article that I read was written as a summary of something that actually happened on April 23rd, 2017. So this article I kept finding is a year after the fact, once everything was said and done. A gentleman named Dennis Dickey, who is a U.S. Border Patrol agent, was preparing a gender reveal for his upcoming child. He had decided to use a combination of colored powder arranged by someone who already knew the gender and tannerite. Tannerite is something you can buy that will explode when it's shot. Does everyone remember Joe Exotic from before the world shut down and everyone was watching?
I remember when that was the happy times.
Whatever the name of that show is with Joe Exotic that I've completely forgotten at this point. Tiger King, there it is. That's what he was using every time he would just blow shit up by shooting it, was just a bunch of tannerite strapped to something. That's what Dennis Dickey used. And sure enough, he fired off a round, and there's a huge explosion, and it's a blue cloud. And hooray, it's a boy.
Yeah, it's an instantaneous blue cloud followed by fire.
Yeah, it's immediately followed by a big-ass fireball that set the surrounding landscape on fire. There is an actual video of this that was posted online of this fire starting. The surrounding landscape starts to burn, like maybe a 30-foot radius. Then you immediately hear someone yell, "Start packing up!" And no one tried to put out the fire. They're just like, fuck this, and they bailed. And sure enough, the fire that started fairly small went on to rip through the Coronado National Forest, burning down 46,991 acres. That's over 92 Disneylands for scale. Dennis wound up being charged in 2018, which is why the article was written then, because he pled guilty. He received 5 years probation and was ordered to pay restitution in the amount of $8,188,069. The first payment he was forced to make was $100,000, and after that they assigned him monthly payments. No disclosure on what the monthly payment was. Side note, the charge was a misdemeanor.
What?
I think it should be pretty obvious at this point that using explosives for a gender reveal is kind of a bad idea, especially in a dry environment. I will say this explosion, it's like a flash of blue. Like, they had to go back and watch the video for sure just to see if it was a boy or a girl, which completely defeats the purpose. And if you're not going to use explosions in a dry environment, you might not want to use them in any environment in general, because on October 26th, 2019, less than a year ago, a couple in Des Moines, Iowa, had a gender reveal for their upcoming child. They had all their family there, and they didn't go buy a piñata or a sorting hat. A few of their family came over and decided they were going to make their own custom-made gender reveal device. They took a metal base plate.
Okay.
They took like a tube of metal. They welded it to the metal base plate. They drilled a hole in the side of it. And then they loaded the thing with gunpowder and then colored powder.
Oh, Jesus.
And then after that, they covered the top with like a cork almost that was made of wood, so they would get like a pop, Now, if that recipe sounds familiar, it's basically how you make a pipe bomb.
I was going to say.
And by basically, aside from the wood plug, that is how you make a pipe bomb. That's exactly how you make a pipe bomb.
Okay.
When they lit the fuse, the bomb went off and revealed the gender. I cannot find what it was because the articles all focus on something else. And that is that a piece of shrapnel flew off of the device, along with other pieces of shrapnel. And Pamela Karameyer, who was 56 at the time, was struck by a piece of that shrapnel. Some sources say she was the grandmother of this incoming baby. Other articles just say a grandmother, so it's not clear whether or not she was this grandmother or this child's grandmother. Emergency services were called around 4 p.m. that day for a head injury. Upon arrival, they pronounced Pamela dead at the scene. She died from the shrapnel striking her in the head. That is definitely not the type of thing anyone is going for during a gender reveal party.
No, that is just ridiculous.
And horribly tragic, dude. Like, you think you're having this wonderful moment, and the next thing you know, like, someone's dead. Like, someone's laying there dead from an improvised explosive device that was used to
just because you wanted to show off, like, my baby's this.
You could have just gotten a big balloon, and filled it with shit and then popped it. That would have totally worked, too.
That's just over the top. And there's actually an episode of 911, I think 911 Lone Star or something, where they cover this. Where
this particular topic gets worked into the show.
Topic where I think the cold open or whatever is a gender reveal party, and someone's barbecuing, and they have one of these explosive devices, or that they uses nitrogen gas or whatever to explode, and powder goes everywhere, and it catches on fire and causes an explosion. And I'm just like, why do people do this? This is like terrifying.
Like, I get the idea behind it, because it's this big moment, and then you usually wind up getting the information, and then you share it with friends and family to let them know this is what we're expecting, that type of thing. And it's just like everyone wanting to be together, but it just gets so out of hand because people make it so much about the spectacle of the event itself and not about the actual information coming out,
Yeah.
And I just think it's a reflection of the fact that people don't rein their shit in and focus on what's actually important there, which is the kid. And when the kid comes out, it just winds up not mattering in the first place. So
I really like the comic by Adam Ellis, where he has the gender reveal
Oh,
party,
yeah.
and they cut open the cake, and it's green, and then everybody whips off their masks, and they're all lizards.
And they just hiss in the sky. Robin's like, I want a cake for gender reveal, and I want it to be green on the inside. I'm like, I'm totally fine with that. That's fucking awesome. So, some people do gender reveals that do not use explosives that are still very, very dangerous.
Really?
A couple in Australia managed to pull it off. They decided they wanted to find out what their baby's gender was by having a friend get in their sports car. I cannot figure out which make or model it is because it's a sky view that was taken from someone's drone.
Okay.
And they were like, do a fucking burnout, bro.
Okay, yeah.
So this guy gets in his car, and it's like Fast and the Furious, the Baby Wars. I don't know which one they're on at this point. And if you never heard of a burnout, it's where you get in your car and like you spin your tires and have a bunch of smoke come out. I think technically what the guy does is a brake torque, where you keep your foot on the brake and you have the engine overpower your brakes, which is, by the way, really bad for your brakes, transmission, and engine.
Yeah.
I used to do it with my car when I was in high school because I was stupid. And then you slowly let off the brakes so you can sort of like creep forward and leave the marks all over the road, which is just a dickhead thing to do. It's unclear how they got the effect to happen. You can either put some sort of liquid treatment on the tires or some sort of powder on the tires as well. But when the smoke started to come out, rather than being white, which it typically is, it came out as blue. So it kind of did work, you know? But as the guy starts peeling out and going down the road, something starts to happen. He decides he's going to do a donut in the middle of the road to continue the fucking celebration. Woo, it's a boy! And then, all of a sudden, a combination of those chemicals on the tires and the amount of heat causes this blue cloud of smoke to ignite. And it's basically shooting like smoke from the tires that's just fire.
Oh my
like
God.
He's fucking Ghost Rider.
No, okay.
And then the smoke starts to just start burning, and it starts wrapping around the car.
Oh my God.
So he immediately lets off the gas. Some dude runs up like, get the fuck out of the car! And the driver runs out of the car while the fire like burns itself out. Luckily, it doesn't catch too bad.
Holy crap.
He winds up getting back into the car and driving it out of the still burning piece of road.
Oh my God.
The car is just severely fucked up. No one gets hurt, luckily, on this one. But it's just mind-blowingly stupid how bad this thing went and how fast it was. And as he's like going down the road at like 5 miles an hour, still doing this burnout, just destroying the road, friends and family are following him, like cheering, like, woo!
Oh my...
With cell phone cameras recording the whole
gosh.
fucking thing.
Oh gosh.
So they got like a perfect view of it. And as much as I'm criticizing this, I don't know how old these folks were. I can't find ages on this. And I will say, like, when I was 18, I did a burnout, and I was like, I want all the smoke in the world come out of these fucking tires. I did it my last day of college, or last day of high school. I did it in the parking lots the whole school saw. And my friend Lee, shout out to Lee, he came over and he poured bleach in the spot I was going to do it. I did this huge burnout. Smoke was fucking everywhere. And it got in the car, and it's a cloud of fucking bleach. So I'm like dying, so I had to do a donut just to clear out the windows and then drive away at high speeds because I was literally suffocating. So it's like, yeah, I did that when I was 18. I'm stupid as well, so it can happen. But at the same time, I would hope that someone had the sense to be like, maybe this could be a bad idea. Because even when we were doing that, I was like kind of nervous, but I was overwhelmed by the whole like fuck high school thing.
What's in that colored powder and stuff like that is what I want to know. Because if people are just tossing this powder out and it's really not good for the environment.
I think the pink one is filled with estrogen and the blue one is filled with testosterone.
Stupid. I hate you.
But I don't know. So I sincerely just don't know how they get it to happen. So these aren't the only things that have happened where something has gone wrong. And I get that when you're trying to do a gender reveal, or even like a pregnancy announcement, or any sort of thing like that, you want to be original because you want to stand out. I don't think there's anything wrong with just being normal or classic or like underspoken or just doing it, you know, like a normal person would. But things tend to get very competitive. So September 7th, 2019, down in Texas, someone decided we need to go big. This is Texas. Everything's big down here. And this couple wanted to have their reveal be even more elaborate than all of those that I've already talked about. Because explosives just aren't enough. A burnout is not enough. So they're actually from Turkey, Texas, which I didn't know was a place. And they reference like how close it is to, I think, Armadillo, Texas, and it's like 100 miles away.
Armadillo or Amarillo?
Amarillo, excuse me. It's 3 a.m. So anyways, this couple went out and they hired a pilot who owned a crop duster. And they're like, we want you to do our gender reveal. So they brought their family and friends out near a field, and they had this pilot paid to fly over this field and dump colored water out of his crop duster or colored liquid, whatever it is that they spray. The pilot was ready to go. He had a friend in the cockpit with him. Just so you know, the plane is only supposed to hold one person. It's rated for a single human being, not two. The plane comes over the tree line. The family's like, woo! And it starts to dump this colored liquid. The color, it's pink. It's a girl. 350 gallons of pink liquid being sprayed out of the back of a crop duster.
Okay.
So, it's a crop duster, and I imagine that's a fairly standard amount of liquid. During the dump, however, the airplane, quote, got too slow. And you guessed it, when a plane gets too slow, it stalls. And as the plane stalls...
Oh, jeez.
I don't know how much you know about crop dusters, but they fly really, really low. So the combination of plane flying very low and plane stalling equals only one thing. The plane crashed. It 100% crashed.
Oh, my gosh.
And thankfully, the plane didn't come down on any of the onlookers, the family. It was running parallel to their line of sight, or perpendicular to their line of sight. So it wasn't coming at them. It wasn't running parallel to them. You know what perpendicular is?
Yeah.
You know what line of sight is? Perpendicular means it's just passing through. Okay. So they watched. Pink, it's a girl. Yay. Holy shit. I think they died. The plane goes down right in front of everyone. And although the plane's wreckage, which I'll have a picture of on our Instagram, is indeed a mangled mess, it wound up upside down, I'm pretty sure. It actually didn't result in any deaths. The pilot himself came away completely uninjured. The passenger, however, suffered minor injuries and had to go to the hospital, but survived. So, to bring this thing to sort of a close, because we're approaching the end, I'm going to move towards some more lighthearted ones, because I think I've covered enough scary stuff where people get hurt or die, or get, set on fire and don't suffer any significant injuries, because I think it's a nice way to wrap it up before we get into the serial killer aspect of the show. So a popular way to reveal pink or blue is by spraying an air cannon. It's sort of like those pop toys, you get that little champagne glasses for 4th of July. It's they're just bigger and they have more force to spray colored dust into the air. I've seen a video repeatedly going through all these sites of a gentleman holding it, and it's about the size of a Pringles can, and pressing or twisting whatever he needs to, and it shoots out the top, and then the bottom explodes with whatever forceful stuff is put in it, and it just smashes him right in the balls.
Oh my god!
And he just hits the ground, and it's like, hooray, it's a boy. You'll also never have children again because you've been neutered by the device that you were using to find out the gender of your child.
This past weekend had that one U.S. Open judge get hit in the neck with a tennis ball.
Yeah, and the throat, that was so fun. Imagine if it sprayed out pink and they're like, it's a girl! And then she went to the hospital. And yeah, Novak Djokovic getting to completely disqualified was just mind-blowing. I mean, it needed to happen. That's the rule. But anyways, we digress. So another thing that happened, and this one blew me away as I went through the details, that I thought was funny originally, and I was like, that's in poor taste. A family decided they were going to use a replica cannon, and they're going to stuff it full of a little bit of gunpowder, and then a bunch of powder, and they're just going to shoot it off in the backyard, not pointing at anyone. And it happened. It went fairly well. Couldn't find the gender on this one, too. It could just find the news reports and a bunch of local news stations talking about it. The boom that sounded afterwards sounded like an explosion, and it shook houses, broke glass on nearby housing, and set off car alarms as far as 2 miles away. That is how much explosive was used in the cannon. I should also point out this particular fact. It was also in Iowa, where the grandmother died from her injuries.
Oh my gosh.
I should also mention the cannon rattling through the neighborhood happened literally 24 hours after that woman died.
What? Oh,
it was the next day. The news was like, are you fucking people stupid, in the most professional manner that they could say it. Stop blowing shit up to reveal, what your kid is going to come out as.
I like the egg one that people do.
Where you smash the egg on your head.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've seen that one. I just okay, this is fun. It's also kind of gross for the parent, so describe the egg one, since I know what you're talking about, but the listener might not.
It's where you crack different colored eggs. They're blue or pink, and they're all hard-boiled until you get to the one that's not hard-boiled, and that's your gender.
So if you pick up a blue or a pink egg, and you smash it on your head, and you get yolk all over your face, and it's all gross, then you have to be like, well, is that a blue or a pink one? That's the...
Well, you have the shells in your hand, you weirdo.
Well, yeah, but you're immediately the first thing you think of is fucking gross, I got egg all over my face. And then you're like, oh, it's a boy. So I've seen that one too. One of my friends actually did that one. And it was like the 12th egg. And they kept smashing these hard-boiled eggs on their forehead, and they're like, it hurts.
But it's, like, not damaging. You know, it's not an explosion.
Oh, yeah, you're not going to lose a life, hopefully. If you lose a life in, like, an egg-cracking incident, then something went tragically wrong that no one could have foreseen. So the woman who, quote-unquote, invented the gender reveal keeps getting reached out to for comment when shit like this goes down. Like so many folks that have created something for it to take on a life of its own afterwards, she definitely regrets it. I've read multiple interviews with her from like 2016, 2018, 2020. And she actually started the trend in 2008 and celebrated it specifically because to that point in her life, she had suffered multiple miscarriages. She had not gotten to the point of viability yet. She had certainly not gotten to the point where she could find out the gender of her unborn child. So for her, it was something very significant to celebrate, you know? It was a milestone she finally hit. She had friends come over because they had knew what she was going through. So she wanted to celebrate that particular milestone. And I think we can totally all understand why that was what she wanted to do. And it got shared a lot on social media, and it became this trend now. But seeing how many people have taken it too far and changed the method by which they deliver this news into something gaudy and elaborate, and at times very dangerous, has certainly shifted her perspective on the whole idea of a gender reveal party. Her Twitter profile literally right now has the headline, quote, creator of the gender reveal party for better or worse. There is obviously additional complications to this whole thing that Robin started to mention when dealing with the issue of gender specifically. Scaryish as a show has always made an effort to be as inclusive as possible to absolutely everyone. We always used to let folks know, hey, send in your emails with your pronouns of what you'd prefer to be called. That's sort of part of the culture. I've had other podcasts much larger than us reach out to us to ask, how do you handle that better? And I've literally just told them, like, just tell people straight up, like, just send us your pronouns and let us know what you prefer to be called. And I don't think Jenna the Creator in 2008 had that on her mind when she did that. And she realized after 2008 how more and more people were being affected by it. And I read this article recently where she talked about how her own daughter, that was the inspiration at the time for the gender reveal party, doesn't follow traditional gender rules. She doesn't like pink. She doesn't wear dresses. She prefers all these other things that are more boy-ish, or however you want to assign that label. Usually, like, girls like that get called like tomboys or other names that are trying to assign some sort of label. And she just lets her daughter take the lead on the things she likes. She doesn't judge. She's just like, okay, cool. And it makes me laugh because it sounds like her daughter, if she saw her own gender reveal, would be like, pink, boo. So I got to say, the way that things wound up taking on a life of its own in this particular instance, in a way, kind of reminds me of Slender Man. It's like this seemingly innocuous thing that someone created winds up being embraced by the public, gaining massive amounts of popularity, and then somehow, some way, people wound up dying from it, you know? And it's so crazy to think how many people are losing their homes or their jobs or their livelihoods because of a fucking smoke bomb and carelessness, or tannerite and powder and just laziness, you know? And it's certainly not the fault of someone who came up with the idea of like, hey, we're going to find out the gender. Let's figure out how we can all celebrate it at the same time. And what's so crazy to me is there's so many ways that have been made up to do this now. There's some of them that are still really harmless, that can still go wrong, but in hilarious and embarrassing ways. And my personal favorite, my favorite gender reveal that I've ever seen, is the baseball method. Not that particular method, but this one particular gender reveal with a baseball. So the baseball is like coated or stuffed. It's specially made with the powder. So once it strikes something, the powder just explodes out, you know? And the video that I saw is this person's at bat, and it's the dad, and someone, you know, tosses the baseball to him for him to hit it with the bat and have the thing explode and find out the gender of the child. And so this guy lines up his throw, chucks it, and the dad at bat sees this pitch come in. It's about chin high, and he just decides to lay off of it, you know? It must be baseball instinct. It's a ball. He's not going to swing at it. You can kind of see he realizes he's made a mistake because that thing, as soon as it touches anything, is going to explode. And there's someone sitting behind him as if they're in the catcher position, no mitt or anything like that. And that person knows that as soon as that ball hits, it's going to explode. So you can see like the thought process in slow motion of like they need to catch it gingerly, and their hands start to move like towards their body to catch this. But this ball was thrown so perfectly, it winds up floating through the air and smacking them right in the face. Wow. So there's this beautiful slow motion pitch that winds up hitting this person right in the face. and the ball just explodes into this powder of blue. And the dad's not even looking. He's just looking directly at the camera like, oops, I missed that. And the gender reveal winds up being this horribly embarrassing yet hilarious moment. And maybe it was intended to be that way for publicity in the first place. But just watching, I was like, these seem so ridiculous to me because no one's talking about the fact that it's a boy. Everyone's just talking about how wrong the gender reveal went, you know?
Yeah.
And I think that's where the whole thing got kind of scary to begin with. And the more elaborate people got with it, it's like people started ignoring the consequences of what could go wrong, you know?
Yeah.
It's so baffling and asinine. That's why I say it reminds me so much of Slender Man. And it's pretty crazy to look at some of these pictures of the destruction that has been wrought by a gender reveal party. And I will have those on our Instagram, like barren wastelands that used to be forests and plains that are absolutely destroyed. I will, however, also have to post the picture just to sort of lighten the mood of someone being struck in the face with a gender reveal baseball, because at least that one's funny. So,
Oh my God, okay.
that's going to be on our Instagram/Facebook. But I hope this topic wasn't too silly, but I definitely thought it was worth mentioning considering that the sky has been blotted out by the smoke from a gender reveal party. And although it seems silly, when I woke up today and I looked out the window, it looked like that scene in Constantine where Keanu crosses over into hell. So I don't think this being a scarish topic was that far-fetched.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. And we're going to take a quick commercial break. On the other side of this is going to be a wonderful true crime story, so stick around.
Welcome back to the other side of the podcast. I am going to cover an interesting topic, piggybacking off my other topic. This week has been somewhat of a busy one, so trying to decide on a topic was kind of hard. I decided to kind of go off of my topic from last week. Last week I covered the Black Dahlia, so this week I'm going to cover the killer that people at some point thought may have been the culprit of the Black Dahlia. So I'm going to cover the Cleveland Torso murders, also known as the Kingsbury Run murders. Between the years of 1935 and 1938, there were at least 12 victims to have been attributed to this still yet unidentified killer. It's 2020, still unidentified. It's almost been 100 years. In the 1930s, Cleveland was bopping, you know, it was the center of population growth. It was continually changing. It was kind of like a melting pot, if you will. And people were kind of picking themselves back up from like post-Great Depression times. It was pretty big city, a city that a killer could easily hide in. And Kingsbury Run was a part of that city. And that it was just like the nitty-gritty, just rough part of town. And those that couldn't quite thrive after the Great Depression found themselves living there in squalor. It was just like dark alleys, makeshift living quarters. They called it like the hobo jungle, quote unquote hobo jungle. It was just like a mess, right? And this is where one of the more notorious murder cases, one of the most notorious murder cases in Cleveland's history took place. So in September of 1934, the first body was found. And again, this episode is going to be like, you know, kind of gore heavy because it's crime, it's true crime, it's murder. There's going to be details that are just kind of gross. So if you want to skip forward, you can. I recommend you do so for a couple of minutes if you don't want to hear murder things. A young man found the lower half of a woman's torso. Thighs were still attached, but were cut off at the knees, which is gross. The body had washed up on the shores of Lake Erie. The Cuyahoga County coroner, A.J. Pierce, noted that there was some type of chemical preservative that had been put on the skin that had turned it red. And it was like red and tough, and it was kind of like leather. So they made like, you know, human leather. After searching the area, only a few other body parts were found, her head not being one of them. And through inspection, they were able to determine that the woman would have been in her mid-30s. The victim would only be referred to as the quote-unquote Lady of the Lake until 2 years later, when she would then be included into the list of victims for these torso murders. a year after her body was found was when the torso murder case officially began, which made her kind of like victim zero for the whole thing, because they didn't really, she was just one, you know, and so they didn't really assign that whole huge case to this one murder that they came across. So on September 23rd, 1935, what seems to be just about a year later, the body of a man was found by two teenagers at the base of what was called Jackass Hill, which makes me laugh because why would you name something that, but whatever floats your boat. So this was where East 49th Street turned into Kingsbury Run. And the body was naked except for a pair of socks. It had been emasculated, aka castrated. The body was cleaned and drained of blood, which makes it totally understandable that people would link this to the Black Dahlia. And if you guys haven't heard it yet, I covered the Black Dahlia last week. You can pause this, head on over to that episode, listen to that one, hop back on over here, because they're kind of connected. But, I mean, you could finish this episode and then go back and listen if you wanted to. But this body that they found had rope burns on both wrists, and the official cause of death was decapitation, which is different than the Black Dahlia, because at least it seemed like the cutting for her happened post-mortem. So the cause of death here was decapitation. They were able to identify the victim using his fingerprints and identified him as Edward Andrassy. And they were able to match his fingerprints to those taken from him during an earlier arrest, which was convenient. Andrassy was only 28 years old. So he's younger than I am. Oh, gosh. He was younger than I am when he got murdered, which is super sad. A second body was found by police nearby. They had also been decapitated and castrated. And he'd been covered with the same chemical preservative as that of the Lady of the Lake. And this body was found to be of a person who was around 40 years old. It seemed that the victim had been dead for at least a few weeks, and they were never identified. And you'll find that happens to a lot of the people, or a lot of the bodies that are found in this case, is they weren't ever able to identify them, which is awful. So a few months later, in January of 1936, half the body of a woman was found neatly wrapped in newspaper and then packed in 2 half-bushel baskets. I feel like a bushel is like those big, huge baskets that you put apples in, right?
That's exactly what I think it is.
Okay, so a half bushel is half the size of one of those big-ass baskets. So half her body was found split into 2 of those half-bushel baskets, and then These baskets were found outside the Hart Manufacturing Building on Central Avenue near East 20th Street by a woman that was walking outside. The rest of her body, minus her head, was found 10 days later in a vacant lot on Orange Avenue nearby. The cause of death was determined to be, you can guess, decapitation. And apparently the strange part about this murder was that the killer had waited for rigor mortis to set in before disarticulating her. So I think that happens after 24 hours, maybe?
Rigor mortis?
Yeah.
I honestly do not know. So wait. Discirculating, or what's that word?
Disarticulating. It's like chopping her apart.
Right, taking off body parts.
Yeah.
But the head was the reason she died in the first place?
Yeah.
So her head was removed, and then he waited for rigor mortis to set on the rest of the body. This is such a weird thing to ask.
Yeah.
This is the weirdest, grossest question I've ever asked. And then he removed the other body parts.
Yep.
Or they. I should say they.
Yeah, because you don't know. No one knows. If it's a girl, guy, who knows? It could be anybody. So they were able to identify the body as Florence Palio, matching her fingerprints to those taken from arrests from prostitution in the past. On June 5th, 1936, 2 kids found the head of a white man wrapped in a pair of trousers close to the East 55th Street Bridge. And this was apparently the head of Andrassy, the first official victim of the whole case. Honestly, I don't know how people manage to like traverse streets that are just named after numbers. I've never lived in a place that had streets, like numbered streets.
It's usually because it's a grid system. Right.
And I grew up in Hawaii. We don't have those.
Yeah, so grid systems,
it's like different.
You just know where, if you know the intersection where something's at, If it's like
But
second
it's
and 55th, and
see
you're
how
on like
hard that is, though.
it's like you just know which lines are which, and then you just know how many we need to go up and need to go over, and that's
it
all.
would take me quite a bit of time living in a city like that to kind of get used to it, because we've been to New York where it was like all numbered streets, and while we're trying to find restaurants and stuff like that in New York, I'm like, these streets are all numbers. It's really hard to figure it out, but I could probably learn it,
I think you'd learn it.
I'd learn it. It would just take me a lot of time, and I'd have to travel through the streets a lot. But that's just me. Anyway, so the same month, in June of 1936, police found the body of a man dumped in front of the Nickel Plate Railroad Police Building, and this body, too, had been cleaned and drained. And it was determined to be the body of a 20-something-year-old, everything intact except for the head. And the cause of death here was decapitation. There were fingerprints taken and distinctive, possibly identifying tattoos on the body, but they were never able to identify him. And there was actually a plaster model of his head made and a diagram of the tattoos and where they were on his body. And they put these on display at the Great Lakes Exposition in 1936. So even though over 100,000 people came to this exposition, saw this, no one was ever able to identify this person.
So morbid and disappointing.
Yeah, this as well as 3 other death masks from the case are on display at the Cleveland Police Museum. And they look really creepy. They're like these heads that are on plaques, like mounted heads kind of, but they're models. They're just plastic masks, or not plastic, plaster masks. And I just can't believe, even though they had this mask, they had the tattoo diagrams, things like that, he was still not identified. It's crazy. So on July 22nd, a month later, another decapitated male body was found. A girl was walking through the woods when she came across the body of this 40-some-odd-year-old man. This victim had been dead for about 2 months, and this one's head was, as well as a pile of bloody clothes, was found nearby the body. And because of the amount of blood that was found and seen to have seeped into the ground, it was determined that that was the location where he was actually killed. So this guy was just killed in the woods and left there. I don't know if maybe he heard someone coming, and so he's like, gotta abandon this. I can't do all the cleaning, do all that stuff. I feel like if there were forensic sciences like we have now, they could have found a lot of evidence on this particular body, because it wasn't cleaned. It wasn't placed in whatever place he had planned on dropping it,
I really do wonder, like, with the advances in the ways we investigate these things, how many of these serial killers would have been as prolific if they happened today?
Right.
Like, would they have been able to adapt? Would they have been, like, so compelled to kill that they found different ways to hide? Or was it just a fact that it was a matter of convenience where they knew they wouldn't get caught if they just executed a few steps because that technology didn't exist then?
Right. It's just, and you can never know because it's all lost to time, right?
What's bizarre is that there's still serial killers, Like, there's
Right.
still serial killers out there despite all the advances that have been made. It's like they are just still compelled to go kill people.
Yeah.
And they know that there's all these things that can get them caught. So it is really a curious question.
All right. So September 10th, 1936, saw the discovery of yet another body. So a traveler tripped over the upper half of a man's torso while trying to hop onto a train at East 37th Street in Kingsbury Run. So there's like a railroad that goes through this place, and it still does, I think, to this day. But this guy, it's one of those, train hoppers where they just ride the train around or whatever. So he's trying to hop onto this train, trips over the upper half of the body, and in a nearby open sewer, a police diver was sent in to search it. And they found the lower half of the torso and sections of both legs. This is just the weirdest time.
It's so gross.
It's so gross.
The fact that someone was just going around killing people and cutting up their bodies.
Yeah,
and just putting them all over in these bizarre places.
There were hundreds that came to watch the investigation, and some think that the killer may have been one of those onlookers, because a lot of the time people say they always come back to the scene, right? This victim was in their late 20s, and the cause of death was decapitation. The coroner, again, A.J. Pierce, noted that there was a lack of hesitation marks, so it pointed to a level of confidence and knowledge about human anatomy, and the head had been removed in one solid stroke.
Wow.
So it's just...
a practiced hand.
Yes. At this point, police were kind of gearing up, detectives put in place to take on this case full time. They wanted to take this seriously and find this killer. And
because up until then, they hadn't been taking it seriously.
A lot of people got put in place here. February 23rd, 1937, the killing continued. The upper half of a woman's torso washed up on shore. This one showed evidence that the chopping of said body was post-mortem, though. So that's a kind of change in the MO in that aspect. The lower half washed up on shore 3 months later. This was supposedly in the same spot as that of the Lady of the Lake, which is interesting. She, too, was never identified. June found a teenage boy discovering a human skull under the Lorraine Carnegie Bridge. Next to this skull was the skeletal remains of a 40-year-old black woman. Dental records were used to match with the skull, you know, how people do that, the teeth, bite marks, stuff like that. So they were able to match it to Rose Wallace, and police tried to follow any leads that they could on her, but weren't able to find any evidence of the killer. And she was the only African-American victim of all the 12 official victims of this case, which is another change in the MO.
Is there a possibility that there were copycat killers that also got included?
Maybe. But when you're looking at skeletal remains, you can't look at the cuts and how clean they were.
Right.
I mean, you could, I guess, if you matched like bones or whatever, but I don't know. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a medical examiner. I couldn't tell you. I'm not Bones, right?
Like the character from the show
Bones.
Of the same name.
Yes.
That examines those things.
Yeah. So.
And Angel's also there for some reason.
I bet. Oh yeah, I forget, that show's weird. So I'm sure if there were people like that back then that could look at bones and just look at the little tiny details, they could have figured it out. But in the 1930s, they don't have that technology, so they can't really figure things out like they could today. It's just so crazy to me that these killers possibly got away with stuff just because we didn't have the technology. So the next month, July 6th, a young guardsman saw a piece of something that looked like a body in the wake of a passing tugboat. Imagine just watching the water, watching boats pass by, and then you see something pop up out of the water, and you're like, what is that? It turns out to be somebody's body, like a piece of body. How crazy would that be?
Terrifying, probably.
Over the next few days, police discovered the rest of the body, minus the head. And this time, the abdomen had been gutted and the heart ripped out. This was
Jesus.
Obviously yet another change to the MO. It's more vicious. And maybe you're right that there could be a whole bunch of different copycat killers who are taking out their just vicious fantasies in the wake of this killer that they're hunting so intensely.
It also makes me wonder if there's like a group of people that are all following a specific predetermined MO, but then also tossing on their own twists, you know, so that you're looking for a single person that's made more difficult by the fact that locations and types of ways these people are dying are changing. And like the idea of like a group of murderers comes from Hot Fuzz in my brain, obviously.
Oh,
but like that idea is pretty terrifying. Like if there were 2 or 3 people that were like all doing this at the same time to avoid being caught. That's just something that pops in my head a lot.
This victim was never identified. On April 8th, 1938, almost a year later, a young man was walking to work in the flats when he saw what he thought was a dead fish along the Cuyahoga River. And when he got closer, he realized that it was the lower half of a woman's leg. A month later, police pulled 2 burlap bags out of the river containing 2 halves of the torso and most of the rest of both legs. This time, a new coroner, Sam Gerber, found drugs in her system, and they were never able to find her arms, and she was never identified. So they were thinking that, okay, was she a drug user or what? And they wanted to see if they could find her arms to kind of see if they could figure that out, but they could never find them. On August 16th, 1938, 3 scrap collectors were foraging at a dump site when they came across the torso of a woman wrapped in a man's blue double-breasted blazer and then in an old quilt. And this, to me, seems like some sort of sign, because why would they wrap it in a man's blazer specifically?
Right.
You know, and then a quilt? It just seems like a little too specific.
It's almost like they're sending a message to someone specifically.
Right.
You just don't know who.
The legs and arms were discovered in a makeshift box wrapped in brown butcher paper and then held together with rubber bands. The head was also found similarly wrapped. Gerber noted that these parts looked as if they had been refrigerated, and the first self-contained refrigeration units were introduced in 1923. So someone having their own fridge wasn't necessarily unheard of, and it'd probably make it really hard for you to determine, like, well, who has a fridge, because it's starting to get so normal for everybody to have their own fridge. It's just something that's really interesting for me, that this is the first one that they're like, this looks refrigerated. There's an episode of Bones or Criminal Minds or something like that where you're able to tell when someone's refrigerated because the meat or something gets like crystallized and breaks. I don't remember. I wish I knew. I really wish I knew more about this stuff, because it's absolutely fascinating how you can tell they've been refrigerated or not. No, you know what show it was from? Dexter.
I've actually never seen Dexter.
What?
Yeah, I knew that was coming.
Oh my goodness, you need to watch
You've
Dexter.
never seen Breaking Bad, so just saying.
Okay, fair enough. So, while searching the area, the police found another body only yards away. So these were found around the same time, if not the same day or whatnot. And the bodies were seemingly placed in view of Elliot Ness's office window. And he was the newly appointed safety director at the time. He'd been put to head this case. And, you know, he was also the leader of the Untouchables, if you guys didn't know. And this person's head was found in a can, which is messed up. Both of these victims were never identified. And they thought that by placing it outside of Ness's window, it was like trying to antagonize him, you know, which is absolutely freaking crazy. When I read that, I was like, what? That's insane. But anyway, that was the last victim to officially be attributed to the torso killer. Things escalated. August 18th, 1938, Elliot Ness and a group of officers and detectives raided the quote-unquote hobo jungles and all their makeshift homes in Kingsbury Run. They raided the area, working through everything, and gathered about 60 men. They searched everywhere in all their little houses, things like that, for clues. They wanted to figure out if anybody knew anything. And once they were done, by order of Ness, they set the entire thing on fire.
Wow.
And burned it to the ground. So all their homes, they just set on fire. July 1939, the county sheriff, Martin O'Donnell, arrested 52-year-old Frank Dolezal, Dolezal.
That sounds right.
For the murder of Flo Polio, and he apparently had lived with her for a while, and had even been acquainted with Edward Andrassy, which is the first victim, and Rose Wallace. And his confession was so robotic and detailed, it was as if he'd been coached through it.
Right.
So it was really hard to kind of believe what he was saying. Before he could go to trial, though, he was found dead in his cell, hanged by a hook only 5 feet and 7 inches off the floor. So I'm 5'8". I'm not very tall, right? And I can't imagine how this guy hung himself from something lower than I am tall. It just doesn't make any sense.
This is really starting to sound conspiracy-esque to me.
Right. So, an autopsy by Gerber revealed 6 broken ribs sustained while in police custody. And so because of this, he was kind of written off as the possible killer because, one, his confession seemed so like rehearsed, like it was too detailed. There were very particular details that made it seem like someone told him to say it. So to this day, people just don't think that he's the actual killer. Another possible culprit was Dr. Francis E. Sweeney, no relation to Sweeney Todd, I don't think.
That sounds familiar.
He'd been a medical doctor in World War II and conducted amputations on wounded soldiers. Apparently, he developed some type of mental illness later. He was brought in for questioning and actually failed a lie detector test. Ness, leader of the Untouchables, so cool.
I had to check my phone just now just to make sure. He ran for mayor of Cleveland.
Yeah.
Yep. He lost.
Yeah.
But I was just like, I'm pretty sure that happened.
Ness felt like this was his path that he needed to go down to find the killer. So he kept pressing this guy. Unfortunately for Ness, this Francis Sweeney was related to a Congressman, Martin Sweeney, and so it made that avenue much harder because what are you going to do? Go after a congressman's relative, And he was running for mayor and stuff like that, or he ran for mayor, whatever. Sweeney eventually did voluntarily commit himself into a mental institution, kind of pulling himself away from Ness. Ness couldn't reach him in there. Now he has that insanity defense. What is he going to do, Supposedly, Ness had a suspect he believed to be the killer, and that person taunted him years after the killing stopped. Apparently, all office police records on this case have been lost, destroyed, or removed.
What the fuck? This is a conspiracy that goes straight to the top.
How does that happen unless it's like an inside job?
Yeah, there's something going on in this one.
Oh my gosh. What if it's a cop the whole time?
That's why they never found out what happened with the Black Dahlia. She's somehow tied to this whole thing,
too.
It's
not so crazy to think that it was a cop after the Golden State Killer turned out
to be a cop.
Yes. So I'm just like, who knows? It could, you never know. The fact that
really
everything's
lost,
it's
really hard to say the word cop without saying co-op.
I'm not a co-op.
You're not a co-op.
The killings stopped as suddenly as they began. And by suddenly, I mean they stopped when Sweeney went into the mental institution. But it could be
interesting.
It could be either, is it true or is it just coincidence or is it sensationalizing? Is it people just saying that because he went to the mental institution, that's when it stopped,
Are there any records of when he went in and if he came out? Because if he was in there,
I didn't look those up, but I should have.
And he wound up getting committed forever, then that would kind of lend to that theory. But if he got out in a week, and the killings didn't continue, then it remains a mystery as to why they stopped.
Yeah. Though some researchers like to think that they know who it was that committed these crimes, any answers have been lost to time. And literally all evidence has been lost to time, all records. Fuck. That's just absolutely insane to me that when I read that, I was like, are you freaking kidding me? All the records are missing. How does that happen?
Conspiracy.
Oh my goodness. Though only 12 murders were officially connected to the case, there may have been up to 20 in total.
Wow.
In an era, when forensic sciences weren't really as advanced as they are now, it's hard to find the itty-bitty pieces of evidence that could possibly break a case wide open. They can't do DNA. They can't do, do they have blood typing yet even?
No.
I'm just like...
Oh, blood typing? I don't know, actually.
I don't know. I have no idea. But they don't have all those little tiny machines that can test everything like we do now. And it's just so crazy. I wish people could go back in time with this technology, because I mean,
there's also the conspiracy theory that perhaps these people were on a list that needed to be eliminated and these people were time travelers. That's all I'm saying. I have the time traveler theory in my head for so many different things, and that would kind of fit as well. They went back, they knew the ways that they could do stuff where they wouldn't be caught, and it sounds like there was different people involved in this, so it could have just been a mission that multiple time travelers had to go on.
Perhaps.
I know I'm tossing out a lot of shit right now. It's 3:33 in the a.m.
Oh, jeez.
That sort of happens when it's late.
And that is the Mad Butcher of Kingsbury Run.
That shit's crazy, dude. The fact that all records were lost, that Ness stopped pushing the investigation.
The fact that Ness was involved with it at all, that's so cool.
Didn't Ness wind up a disgrace and he died of heart disease?
I'm pretty sure.
I remember something went wrong in his life after the Untouchable stuff. I'm pretty sure he died of a heart attack in some weird way. So it's just all of this stuff adds up to something else was going on than a single person was committing murders and was just lucky enough to not get caught, There was something else that happened that was definitely shady that kept this thing from being solved. So, and now we're talking about it 90-ish years later, and we'll probably never know for sure unless someone confesses with like a complete set of records that were somehow not destroyed and proof. So that's very unlikely to happen. But really good topic. That was awesome.
Thanks.
So cool. Good stuff. I think that's going to be just about everything we have for episode 143. If you have any stories you'd like to send our way, they could be supernatural, paranormal, true crime, whatever they may be, you can email storytime@scaryish.com, and you can also go to our website, scaryish.com, and click on Contact Us and send your story that way. You can also hit us up on any of our social medias. Facebook is facebook.com/scariyishpodcast. Twitter is @scariyishpod, and Instagram is @scariyishpodcast. Robin, for folks who would like to donate to us, how can they do so?
If you would like to donate to us, you can go to patreon.com/scariyishpodcast. Tiers start at $1. Those are monthly donations. That's where you can get ad-free episodes. If you folks don't want ads, head on over there. It's only $1 if you want to join. And it definitely helps us out a lot that way. You can also go to coffee, ko-fi.com/scariyishpodcast, and those are one-time donations. All your donations go to helping us upgrade our studio setup and just keep us going, give us more time to make you guys more content, and because we do have full-time jobs, right? And anything you do, even just sharing the episode with your friends,
means so much.
It means so much to us. So thank you.
When we get emails or comments that say like, "Hey, new listener here," I'm like, "Oh my god, we still get new listeners."
Yeah,
it's so
I
cool.
get so excited hearing about new listeners. So if you guys are ghost listeners and don't really say anything in our online groups or Discord or whatever, we are still so thankful and hope you
keep enjoying the
content. Yep.
Absolutely. So thank you so much for listening. We appreciate every single one of you. We hope you enjoyed the episode. And that's just about everything for this one. So Robin, go ahead and sign us out.
Keep on creeping on, and we'll talk to you guys later.
Bye.